is up, everybody? Oh, so excited for Blue Node Lounge. Welcome. Today I have RG Sayre, also the founder of Psychonaut. So today we're going to talk about Big Tech-Bacco. But again, this is Blue Node Lounge where we cover everything Bitcoin, ordinals, runes, macro, everything fun in the crypto space. So RG, welcome, man, and thanks for being on the show.
GM, thanks for having me. I'm still doing some of my distribution and sharing here to get some of our people here.
Yeah, at the beginning of every show, or like while the music's playing, we're both furiously like typing with our thumbs, trying to make sure that that everybody knows. Because the one thing about audio spaces is you can you can tell people when they are, and people can set a reminder, and then it sends them an alert. With video, unfortunately, X doesn't have that feature yet, but I suspect it's coming soon. It's definitely coming soon. So
they seem like they're always like one or two steps behind, like getting the app to make sense and be usable. Like even the fact that the mobile app and the desktop app don't work the same, like baffles my mind that this far into the company. But Elon's got more important stuff to worry about these days.
Video actually is one of their, because Linda Yaccarino, I actually used to be in TV, and I worked for MTV back in the day when it was cool, I promise. But Linda Yaccarino worked for one of our competitors. I think I met her. She's the CEO of X, obviously, but video is a huge, huge part of kind of where they're going. That's why you always see her promoting like the Kardashians getting millions and millions of views. I mean, X video and X like programming is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's certain things that it can't compete with audio spaces, but there's some things where actually it's kind of more optimized and better, like the pink ring and being, listed first and stuff like that. So, it's interesting, but I just love it because I can see expressions. And more importantly, you're here to share Big Tech-Bacco. You've been on a roll just making so many ordinals. I'd love for you as we get into this. Obviously, we're going to get into Big Tech-Bacco, look at everything, but I love that you basically like almost like not for Lent, but you've gone cold turkey with like runes trading and stuff, and your art output and Psychonaut's branding, I see it more and more, and it's been more and more prolific, and I love to see it, man. I love what you're doing over there.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, I sort of tapped out on a lot of the trading stuff, which is what draws a lot of people into crypto, and I've been in crypto since 2017, but it's never been my primary focus. It's always been the backdrop to running companies, working on other projects, but it's been an interest and a fascination of mine. And it kind of comes and goes depending on like what hype cycle we're in, what else is going on in my life. But I kind of got into ordinals a little bit late. So I started in ordinals a little over a year ago, but ordinals had already been around for, I don't know, about a year or so. And I became super fascinated with the protocol. I sold a bunch of my other assets on other chains, moved everything into ordinals, and then runes came, and I got pulled into that and started to do like a lot of degenning and trading. But I'm a creator at heart. I've been a creative my whole life. I started as a writer at ad agency when I was, coming out of school, and then started a couple companies, and like creative expression, whether it's writing, music, art, is just like what motivates me as a human. And so I found that I couldn't really live in those two worlds at the same time. The more that I was involved in trading, the more it would take away my focus from creating stuff. And it's like mentally exhausting to try and trade. And I'm not very good at it. I had a couple, I have some wins, but in my experience, most of the value I've created for myself in my life has been doing things, creating projects, businesses, whatever it is. And I had this idea for Psychonaut over the summer, and I realized I couldn't do both. So I've sold almost all my runes. I still have a lot of ordinals that I collect, but I definitely shifted my focus more towards the art market. And now I put so much energy into creating and inscribing, and it's been super refreshing for me, at least.
That's super cool, because it does. You're right, though. You use the right term there. It takes a lot of energy to what's first it's Odin.fun, now it's Alkanes. Like there's always a new Rune Goldberg machine or like pachinko machine or pinball machine that everybody is gravitating towards. And I suspect, like with Odin, because I just happened to interview Bob a little earlier. I got in, bought a couple runes, they went up, and I sold them. So I made a couple grand. Like nothing
Most
to write home about.
Do that though,
right? But no,
get in, bag hold.
right? But it takes energy to do that, because I'm good at getting into trades and then I kind of like focus on something else and I forget about it. The fact that you've sold all your altcoins, your ETH, your Solana, whatever, you've really just focused on ordinals. Like, Psychonaut, I feel like is it takes a while to break in the space. You weren't here in the ground floor in that first weekend, in January of 2023 or whatever it was. But since then, like, you've really focused, and I feel like, here's RG's, here's your handle on X there. I'm losing my words today, but here's Psychonaut, but you guys are just doing cool stuff. And I feel like I know you've made a lot of friends in the space, but I still feel like you're doing cool stuff. You're pushing the limits of what, art can be, and you're making people think. And that's all it really is at the end of the day. Your pricing always seems fair on your launches, but it seems like most importantly, you've started companies, but you're just having fun, and you're figuring out on the fly as you're flying the plane, what Psychonaut is. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we have a big picture concept of what, like, and when I say we, it's basically me and a co-creator partner who's been a creative partner of mine for the past 15 years on so many different brands and projects and in different things. So the two of us do all the creative. He is a trained artist, like went to Pratt Institute. He's been in design his whole life. My background was more on the writing side. So I do a lot of the concepting, the ideation, the writing. But I'd say, I've been using Photoshop for 20 plus years and I'm getting better and better at it. So I'm actually doing a lot more design and artwork. So like for Big Tech-Bacco, I created the first 7 pieces, and we'll look at those later. And he did a lot more of the illustration type stuff. So the two of us are experimenting. And the cool thing about this space to me, creating art digitally, whether it's on Bitcoin or whatever chain you're creating on, is like, one, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can try new things. You can throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, which is cool. And then for someone like me, like who has ADHD and like can't sit still, and I have more ideas and I can keep up with, and like in the past, when you're trying to build like a traditional company, it's all about like focus and don't experiment and like do, and like that doesn't really jive with how my brain works. And so to me, the creative freedom of like having an idea, creating a concept, inscribing it, putting it out there, doing that again every single week, it's been like super energizing for me. And so the big picture theme of Psychonaut is pretty much like the world is going psycho. People are losing their minds right now in all facets of life. And a lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with the way we consume media, obviously the political landscape, and then obviously driven a lot by big tech companies and the algorithms and how they monetize. And so the idea behind Psychonaut is like, can we create art and media that pushes people to reflect on their humanity and like shifts their consciousness in some way? So it's a meaningful project in that sense. It certainly has, inspiration from psychedelics and, mindfulness and those types of things. And it's fun. So like that part, we know how it's going to like be successful, and is it ever going to make money? And like, my goal isn't to do something massive. Like it'd be nice to support my family's living expenses at some point, like make this a, career. But beyond that, like my last company actually got kind of big. We had 125 employees at its peak, which was crazy. And I actually hated it. Like it was and I was trapped, to be honest with you. So a big part of this is also realizing like what I don't want. So there's those things that I kind of know. And then everything else, it's like, cool. Those are the rules of the game. Let's experiment and just do cool stuff and stuff that we think is cool and figure out the rest from there.
Yeah, no, I love the philosophy. It sounds like from the companies you've had before, specifically the last company you worked on, you're getting to tap in to kind of who you were in the early copywriting days, just like a creative kind of free ADHD spirit, and you're corralling that into this. Like, it's funny because in some ways you and I have some parallels. Like, I'm doing a show, I'm trying to build, the Blue Note Lounge brand and the Blue Toshi brand, but I don't ever want to like compromise kind of morals, be like, hey, come on the show, big artists I kind of like your art, and then maybe give me a free drop. Like, for me, it's like interviewing the most interesting people possible to get the best conversation possible. Like, you and I obviously talk offline a lot, and I do with a lot of people. And what I say at the end of every call, I'm like, that was a show. Like, it's just, to me, the fascinating, we're in this space, and I'm not even going to say, like, I'm so sick of saying like we're so early, whatever, because like Ordinals, I saw a great article the other day. Who was it by? I'll think of his name, but it was basically like, look, Ordinals is like a niche within a niche within a niche. Like, so many of even the other chains like Ethereum, like that, they don't get it because like there's so many factors before you can kind of get it. We were the first, blockchain, the first digital gold, if you will, but we weren't the first to art. So like coming back to this is this interesting kind of revisit to Ordinals. From your business days of running a company with 125 people where you felt trapped to now, like, there's no roadmap for you now. Like, is that scary for you?
I actually prefer that, honestly. Like, I've always done better in like unstructured environments. Like, I was a terrible student when I was in school. I didn't get good grades. And the whole structure just didn't jive with how my brain worked. But the second when I got to college and started majoring in English and creative writing, like, I started to excel because that was, what I should have been doing from the beginning. And so part of like, being, I guess, neurodivergent is the new word for this. They didn't have that word when
Did
I
you
was
watch
growing
my
up.
show with Chad last week?
Yeah. You mentioned to me about
Yeah.
neurodivergence the other day, and I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, we didn't call it that when I was a kid. We called it like stupid or like all these negative
Yeah,
things.
it's
It was a really
sad.
negative connotation. And like now it's like, wait a minute, I just have a different type of intelligence than a
Yeah.
lot of other people. My brain works differently. And we have so many more ways to use our skill sets and our strengths than fitting in a box. And
Right.
so for me, like the unstructured, like I'm very risk tolerant. People with ADHD tend to be risk tolerant, impulsive, all of those things. So I don't mind the uncertainty of where is this going to go? How, I like that. It's kind of exciting for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and I love that impulsiveness, but I would add a layer to that because I think you and I are similar in that way. You also, like, when you're impulsive, especially since you've had a company, because obviously I've had companies too, and you're impulsive but very instinctual. Like, someone could pitch me
Yes.
for something, I will literally, to help my company, I'll literally ignore thousands of people, but every once in a while that person gets through, I'll call them and I'll basically stress test them very quickly to poke holes and to be like, okay, is this a total, like, did they get through my initial shield by being a bullshitter, or did they get through my initial shield because they're the real deal? And right away, like, I will hire somebody within like 6 minutes, or at least I'll know. And then that half hour, I'll be like, okay, send me a proposal. Like, if I know, I know. Are you kind of the same way?
Yeah, I think people with at least certain types of neurodivergence have a very strong intuitive sense, because the thing about like the ADHD brain is you take in so much stimulus, and sometimes it can be distracting, and that's why people get distracted so easily. But we also can take in a lot of information and can intuit very quickly because we're perceiving a lot of things that other people may not be perceiving. And so for me, I think as a creative, this has helped me a lot because it helps me tie together ideas and concepts and like things that other people don't see.
Right.
I see them and I can intuit them, very quickly. And that's a strength. Now, in my opinion, every strength has a weakness, right? There's like a flip side. So
Krypton.
that's something I've learned about myself and running a company. Like, your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. So although I can intuit and I, can perceive a lot of things, I can also get distracted and not pay attention to people when they're talking to me and all those other things that we can save for another show.
No, I find this stuff fascinating. To me, it's like I love to learn how people tick, and I just wonder. Like I've been talking about this with a lot of friends in the space. Like, is there? Maybe it's in any new space, but is there like mental illness or like maybe it's just neurodivergence, but like you also see like last weekend, and obviously this show is not about that. We're not going to go there, but I unplug in the weekends, but obviously I look at X every once and again. I'm like, what is going on? Like people are literally melting down, jumping off the boat like it's on fire. Do you think this space has an outsized amount of kind of crazy people, or do you have to be that way to be more on this cutting edge where all the normies, we look at them and our friends and everyday life, are like, God, you don't even know so many steps of the things that I've learned and embodied in this space. Like, so how do you make ends meet with that theory?
Yes. The answer I believe is
Yes
yes.
to all.
Because honestly, like I think for two reasons. One, if you look at it from the DGen side and you look at it from the artist side, both DGens and artists probably have higher likelihood of being neurodivergent in some way, like ADHD for sure, more likely to gamble, more likely to have like addictive personalities, more things that might pull you into like DGen type trading. Definitely think there's a lot of people who probably have ADHD in that camp. It's probably what appealed to it in my brain, at certain points.
Right.
And then artists too. So I
Yeah.
definitely think people in this space certainly are more likely than average to fall into one of those buckets.
Yeah, so I want to get into Big Tech-Bacco because I think there's going to be so much conversation stemming around this. The only thing I would say to that from like the mainstream normies, look how sports gambling has come in. Like I almost feel like we're just expressing our base, more gambly degen nature, in my opinion, in an interesting kind of 4D chess way. And maybe that's my mentally ill way of coping with how deep down this rabbit hole I've gone. And there's no coming back up because I don't even know which way is up anymore. But you look at all the normie friends and they're gambling with these parlays and they're just like, they're so hooked and addicted to that stuff. Like, I just wonder if it's running parallels in normie land with different things, or if no, this attracts a special breed of creative lunatic.
Yeah, I think there's some overlap. Like all my friends who are into, I don't do sports gambling
I don't either.
because I don't believe I've ever had any edge and I don't pay close enough attention. But certainly my friends who do sports gambling are probably mostly in that bucket. So there's probably some Venn diagram of like ADHD, tech forward, like degen trading on crypto or
Right.
something like that.
Right.
There's some other,
Yeah.
quality that pulls people in here. But I don't know, I've become very cynical of it to some degree, and I'm happy I've personally stopped mostly trading because it like, going back to the beginning, it's just allowed me to focus on creating, and I just get so much more positive energy just thinking about how much time I spent refreshing charts and worrying and when's something going to go up or down. Oh, it's like just takes so much energy out of you.
Right. So you don't plug in to any of that stuff at all. Cause like on X, you do have like strong takes with like not rugs and extractors, but like you're not afraid to be like to express your opinions, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, I think most of my opinions, like earlier on, like if you look at my content from when I first started this X account, which was about a year ago, a little over a year ago, certainly like very focused on trading and collecting, but more on the degen side. I even built a freaking runes dashboard with like a scraper tool with before
Interesting.
runes had any tooling. Like I built something public and it kind of got shared around a ton using some AI tools. So I was like very in that world, and I've sold pretty much all my runes. I do have a lot of ordinals that I still collect, and then I still have some of those ordinals that were probably acquired during my more degen time that I just like doesn't make sense to sell them, so I'm still sitting on them. There's some that I still think are cool. Like I still have a couple opiums. Like I think like puppet culture is cool,
Sure.
and I think opium as a subset of that is like a very historical kind of asset. So there's some of that I still have, but I think my takes more recently have been tangentially related to that stuff, but more trying to redirect the market towards thinking about art and artists. Obviously, there's so many different opinions on this, and I've been on some spaces talking about it.
Right.
And so yeah, so I've just been trying to shift that content. So I'll still have takes related to collecting and stuff, but I'm slowly moving that more to just focus on art related stuff, supporting artists, etc.
Yeah, sweet. And you've been obviously very supportive of artists. Obviously, you're a collector and an artist, and you're building a brand. It's Psychonauts interesting because I wouldn't, like I hate classifying things, but I would classify you as Psychonaut as much as a brand with a good like messaging as it is like being an artist. And that's not no shade to that, but like, whereas some artists are like, oh, that's an artist, this is their new collection, whereas you're building like more of this branded entity. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it's one of those like words and categorizations that can mean different things to different people. For example, I know Postbook is very like anti the idea of a brand. She's like, I'm an artist, I'm not a founder. We were just on Spaces the other day. She's talking about this and like kind of drawing that line in the sand in like distinguishing artist from founder, which is totally cool. I have no problem with that.
Right.
My background is in creative and advertising agencies. I almost see the entire world through the lens of brands. Like I can't help it. My
Right.
brain works that way. And when I think of a brand, to me, a brand is just like the essence of an entity that exists in someone's mind or in the collective consciousness. And even a personal artist, in my opinion, has a brand, whether they like it or not. Now it's just we're playing a little bit of a semantics game
Of course.
here. Um, but so I think Psychonaut to me, it certainly feels a little bit more like a brand because one, it's a couple people working on it, right? It's myself and my partner. So it made sense to kind of create this entity that had its own voice that we contribute to, but
Right.
it's not necessarily us. I may create stuff outside of Psychonaut. For example, I'm thinking about inscribing something under my personal inscription, which I
Right.
haven't done anything under yet. I might do a poem or something, but it might not have anything to do with Psychonaut. So there's sort of this entity, and when we create art through that lens, it goes into Psychonaut. And then two, perhaps Psychonaut exists and it's bigger than me and it's bigger than my partner and other artists contribute in the future. Or
Right.
maybe after, our time here is over, it lives on in some way, which is one of the reasons we're inscribing on Bitcoin. So it is sort of like a brand, but I don't think about it like a brand in a very traditional, like economical sense.
Yeah, no, that's very well stated. And with Bitcoin and decentralization, like it sounds like you're leaving it very open ended what it is, because obviously the difference between if you just look at Psychonaut as a brand and, Web2 brands, they're very controlled. The messaging is very controlled. Obviously, that's why with normies every day I look at them, I'm like, don't you see? Like, it's free over here. There's no fences. And I'm sure, it's like even a punk rock band, like you're like, wow, they're totally coloring outside the lines. But you're like, no, they look like the ecosystem of being in a punk rock band. So there is even ironically conformity outside of kind of the mainstream. But what I love about this space is you don't have to define it anymore. And like you said, we there is no playbook right now. There's Yuga, there's Azuki who did it well. Obviously, CryptoPunks were free at the beginning, and then CryptoPunks took a life of their own on this side. Maybe Node Monks. Like there's certainly some collections that have gotten a lot of followers and created these tribes, but it's still kind of wide open as to what will in 20, 30 years, how this whole industry will be looked at, and it's cool that we can be here to kind of help, hopefully have a voice in defining it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what it will become is going to be the sum of the contributions that all these creators, put into the ecosystem, and then what resonates with the community. And there's different communities that are going to have different things that resonate. And there's always going to be like that financialized component, and there's going to be the art component, and there's going to be a utility component,
Right.
and other components we probably haven't even yet identified. Um, but the cool thing is that it is so open, to your point, that it's not like a walled garden per se. I do think there's probably some walls in certain aspects of like, especially the more you get into like the financial side, that gets goes down a different rabbit hole
Of
of
course.
financial manipulation and all that, and not even worth talking about it. But from a creative standpoint, it's an unwalled garden, and we can put out all kinds of experiments. And this is just our take on that right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to finish this show with getting into detail on that, but let's get into Big Tech-Bacco because I think it's gonna trigger a whole bunch of interesting conversations. So lay the groundwork for us. We're on your website right now, and Big Tech-Bacco is this was a much smaller one of one drop. There's 7 one of ones, correct?
Yeah, there's 7 one of ones that were sort of the original pieces that are satirizing different tech companies and tech platforms. And then there are a couple additional pieces that we created that were like meant to be physicals. I didn't scribe those pieces as well, but the embodiment of that is probably gonna be like posters, and we have a couple phone cases we did. But the concept behind Big Tech-Bacco was basically drawing analogies and parallels between how Big Tobacco would market their products to consumers last century, um, through basically hiding the harm that they were doing and like just massively profitable industry, selling people products that were killing them while hiding the fact, by creating ads saying like, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend this cigarette brand, or pregnant women should reduce their nausea by smoking, like literal advertisements of
Yeah.
that nature. There was an ad I found in the video that we made, you could see it, of the Flintstones, smoking cigarettes and promoting them. So there was like this widely accepted, and early on, probably people didn't understand the consequences, but there was certainly a shift at which the general public and certainly the tobacco companies and the medical industry knew what they were doing, but the industry was too big and too profitable to do anything about it. So thinking about big tech companies, I started to really draw that analogy in my mind about the way that, big tech came on the scene with the iPhone. Really was
Right.
kind of like the first major innovation in that sense, and Google and all these companies in which they sort of pitch themselves as like really improving our lives and making everything better. And now we're finding out all of the consequences of screen addiction, of self-image that people have from using Instagram, and self-esteem and depression and anxiety and obesity, and like literally the list goes on and on. And the industry's become so big. So to me, there was just like this moment like, oh my God, this is like the same thing. And how do I communicate these ideas through art and really, find interesting ways to convey that message? So that's sort of the concept behind the series.
Yeah. So let's just go there because I love this video. Let me make sure it goes full screen right, but let's just play it. It's a minute-long video about the Big Tech-Bacco series, but it captures so many things. My company actually developed 3 of the first 50 iPhone apps at the launch of the App Store. So that I am very cognizant and aware of the evolution pre-iPhone to post-iPhone and how it has, that whole revolution has changed everything. I'm hoping we're at the end of the mobile phone phase and that addictive thing in your pocket. But we'll see. We haven't exited it yet. Apple hasn't really done anything super groundbreaking or creative since Steve Jobs died, but yet they can sell these things for 3x everybody else and still own a crap load of market share, especially among, more upper middle class and upper class folks, right?
Yeah. And before you play this, just a quick note, like all the footage in this video is all actual commercial footage that I found in like public archives. So that's just like what makes it super interesting. Like, yeah, go ahead.
Unbelievable.
Okay, how's about taking a nap? Hey, I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break. That's it.
Me and my Winston.
Salem, America's largest selling menthol cigarette.
I'd walk a mile for a Camel.
If you love Facebook so much that you check it every time you're at the computer, just think how great it would be to check it every time you're, well, nowhere near your computer.
I love that you flipped to
your
the
phone.
cigarette guy. Yeah, it's just, I love that.
Yeah. So I mean, pretty wild, right? That all that is like literal actual footage from commercials. And the interesting thing, like when I was first doing that video, I kind of had the idea of how I wanted to like, frame it up and everything. And in the first draft, I had all these, the second half when it flips to the contemporary room, I had all these clips of like different modern day tech companies, and it was like a Netflix ad and a whatever. And then after I had built the whole video, I came across that iPhone ad for Facebook. I was like, this is too, all I need is this one ad from Apple. It says the whole entire story and it's about Facebook in the same ad. And like it just like it hit so
Yeah.
hard once I put that in there.
Yeah, it really is both. And and that was the early days. Like now when you hear it, it sounds so like, well, of course, because the I would say Gen X and boomers are probably most addicted to Facebook. Obviously, Instagram's got its own younger audience. And it's funny because X and Instagram kind of split industries. I would say design and fashion probably were won by Instagram. I would argue that crypto, certainly the smartest people in crypto certainly are on X, right? I think the reporters, maybe mainstream media, maybe the more democratic side of media has gone away from X, but really X is for reporters, crypto, and there's probably a couple others, but it's been this bifurcation of media and usage where people are. So you've got Google, Facebook, aka Meta, Google, aka Alphabet. Everyone changes their names, I guess. And then you've got obviously Elon and X. So it's been a very interesting split. And then you've got TikTok with China, right? And then you got kind of, I don't want to say an indie, but a big indie like with Snapchat, where like all the girls and guys are like hooking up dates and stuff like that. And, in high school and college. So it's very interesting because different messaging is creeping into each of these that often are very different. The algorithms have become very heavy-handed. So sorry, that's me on that's me on a complete tirade. But
yeah.
But what were you thinking about when you created this?
So the first thing, like as I'm creating these pieces, once I had the concept nailed down, because I come from that advertising background, like I was a writer at Leo Burnett, which is like one of the bigger ad agencies in the country. Early on, I was around some very creative people and very talented people, and I learned a lot about the process of ideation and brainstorming. And the thing that makes, good ad agencies successful is they focus on the big idea. And so to me, it started with the big idea. And once I had that big idea of this association between these two industries and the wordplay between tobacco, Tech-Bacco, I'm like, all right, there's something here. And the first thing that popped in my head was like Zuckerberg as the Marlboro Man. Like that image in my head was just like so funny. Like I just thought there was something to that. And so the Facebook piece was the first one that I did. It's probably all the way. Yeah, there you go. That was where I started. And I started to look, one of the early things we do when we start to think about visuals for art or, ad campaigns or whatever it is, we create mood boards. So I went onto Pinterest and I basically started looking up old cigarette ads and created a Pinterest board of all these different old cigarette ads. And this is actually in my tweet thread. I think I actually linked to the actual source ad that this is based off of, but I basically found a Marlboro, I can't even say that word, Marlboro,
yeah,
ad that was basically this layout. So I found it and I was like, all right, how do I get Zuck? And I basically fed into Midjourney a bunch of pictures of like the cowboy and a bunch of pictures of Zuck, and was able to generate this image of him on a horse through AI. And then from there, I can manipulate the colors and the contrast. And like in Photoshop, I can really dial it in to get the feel that I'm looking for. And then I basically painted the rest. I painted the background, added the green flourishes and kind of made it look worn down and kind of imitated the ad. And then I found the right font that I was looking for. And the crazy thing about this one and a couple of the other pieces is like, these are the actual taglines. Facebook's actual tagline is "It's quick and easy." And so I thought there was something really funny to taking the company's taglines and then putting them in ads like this, where like they just take on an entirely different meaning like I think a lot of times the best satire is when you can actually use someone else's own words, put it in a new context, and now the meaning is totally different. And so I never even knew Facebook had a tagline. I certainly never knew that it's quick and easy. But in this type of environment, it just really changed the meaning. And so this was the first piece I did. And after doing this, I was like, okay, there's something here. I need to just keep going.
Right. And coming from advertising, that, who was it? It was like Sigmund Freud's like nephew. Like they knew how to hack into your limbic system and your kind of reptilian brain and get past the cognitive. It's all this emotional behavior. Obviously the cigarette ads with Fred and Barney. I mean, like the freaking Flintstones selling cigarettes, and it's so disgusting. I know sugar was the same way. They're like Harvard did a study that turned out to be entirely fake, that sugar was like good for you. And now sugar's in all our foods. Like we're paying the debt and the toll century later on research that was proven to be bullshit. But what these things do is they hijack, it's the man on the horse, it's the Wild West, it's self-sovereignty, right? To use Bitcoin terms, but it bypasses your thinking brain and it kind of reaches your emotions. I love that you combine the both, because I think the social media networks now, they've gotten too big. They've gotten too powerful. We know that Facebook has been censoring stuff all over the place. And they still do. I mean, to me, it's almost an unusable app. It's good to see for births, deaths, and weddings, right? It's like, hey, I'm so sorry. Hey, congratulations. And like that's Facebook in a nutshell.
Totally. And you said something there that reminded me one other thing. So the one thing our website doesn't do yet is show the names of the pieces. And I think the name of an artwork is actually a pretty important thing because it adds context and it adds depth of meaning. So you mentioned the word the Wild West, but the name of that piece is actually the Wild West. And so we try to, when I'm writing a name for a piece, I try to think about multiple levels of meaning, right? So Facebook is sort of the Wild West of like data privacy. There's no regulation, and tying it in with the Marlboro Man, I thought was kind of clever. So this piece is called the Wild West. So as we go through the pieces, I can tell you the names of them too.
Oh, I love that. A little known fact, you might know this because, we live in the same state, but Illinois is one of the only states that had facial recognition privacy laws on the books. I don't know if you remember this, but like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, there was a class action lawsuit in Illinois versus Facebook. Facebook lost and everybody got like, I think it was like $300. Like obviously what Facebook did doesn't even pales in comparison to what we got back, but we each got, and that just goes to show you, they were literally taking all of our pictures, like measuring the distance between the eyes, the right eye to the right ear, the left, like they were getting all of our facial dimensions. They have that. Clearly they've sold it. And only Illinois, there's one other state that had it. I don't know if they did the
probably
lawsuit.
California.
Yeah, probably. And so we all won that class action lawsuit if you filled out the card and didn't think it was a scam.
I remember getting some small check.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a couple $100 and you just, obviously those lawyers then made billions of dollars, right? So
Crazy.
It's just like justice, yay. And Facebook only had to do that for 2 states and they did it to everyone else. And I'm sure even with you and me, I'm sure we signed somewhere for that $200. Like, yeah, you can sell my entire facial pattern anywhere. That's why in the airport now, like I'll do the TSA pre-check, but that whole clear thing, I'm like, isn't there like some limit of the data that I want to give big business and the government, and they probably already have, but it's like your ocular thumbprints, like it's like let me keep one thing, like my thoughts and my ocular fingerprints.
And even your thoughts, those are probably not going to be safe very soon.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, and that's why I think this collection is so timely. All right, should we move to the next one?
Let's talk about the next one. So this one will be the way this website blows it up really big. It might be hard to see it all in one deal, but basically this one is called 10 packs a day. And so for this one, obviously focusing on X, wanted to really think about just like, especially living in the world of X for what we do in crypto, focusing on just like the nature of the addiction and
Right.
all the things we know we feel and we know that happened to us by participating on X, yet we all continue to do it anyways. And so I was trying to really spoof that, spoof the fact that people are always, down looking at their phones all the time. So there's obviously that sort of visual language here going on.
Right. Right. The
And
whole
then a little
perspective is like you not only looking at your phone, but you like having it really close to your face, and you don't know anything else that's going on around you.
So to that point, if you scroll up a little bit, I thought it would be funny to place a subject actually in the middle of a street. You can't really tell, but because it's like
Oh yeah, nice.
But like part of the idea here was just like that little tease, the fact that like you literally don't know where you are and people are like looking at their phones as they cross like super busy intersections and stuff. So I thought there'd be a little funny, subtle thing in that, to your point. Um, but also, this is also the Twitter's tagline is or X. It's blaze your glory. Literally, that's the tagline.
Which basically, if you had said to me like, hey, I'm gonna give you a quiz, I'm gonna name 5 company taglines, and you're gonna tell me, all you have to do is tell me what industry it is, and you'd be like, blaze your glory. I'd be like, cigarettes. You'd be like, nope. So
it's crazy. So like
yeah.
there's that, like, so basically I rebuilt the Twitter kind of tweet interface here, and I knew I wanted to do something with a Surgeon General warning. I wasn't sure how I wanted to execute it, but when I thought about doing a tweet from the Surgeon General, I thought that was kind of funny. And then I was like, well, of course Elon would respond to it, and of course his engagement would be 10x the engagement of like
I didn't even ratio, and I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so there's all these like little things I was trying to work in here to like build the satire and kind of add a little bit humor and to the time that he tweeted it 69 minutes ago, which obviously wouldn't ever show because it's over an hour. So I just tried to add a little bit of humor and satire to this one. But really, the big picture message, it really is saying a couple things. It's saying about the fact that we ignore all these warnings. We know things are bad for us, just like with cigarettes. We do it anyways. It's kind of spoofing a little bit of like the power of someone like Elon in this ecosystem.
Right.
So there's a couple different like levels here. And then even if you scroll up a little bit where when you're about to write a tweet, this is what it says. It says, what is happening? But again, this is where context kind of changes things a little bit, because it's almost like a rhetorical question, like, what is happening?
What is
like,
happening?
Sort of
Is it question mark exclamation point or no?
I believe it. I think it is.
Hold on, let's see.
I actually think it is.
That's genius. It's just funny how everything kind of, okay, it's just a question mark, but I do like that, because I think adding that in is definitely a nice touch. I don't want to spend too much time here because
we can keep through.
Because the thing is, like, I don't want to get booted off there, because then I'd be like, hey everybody, follow me on Noster because I'm over here.
The funny thing about the X one, honestly, you say that, like when I first shared that tweet the other day, I shared an image of that. Normally the Psychonaut tweets do pretty well. We get pretty high engagement. I tweeted the X one and it got like 10 views and 1 like. And I'm like, there's no way, like, it's for sure being filtered out. Any post we post gets way more than that. So I deleted it, tried it. Like, there's definitely some censorship with Elon where he's probably moderating content that has his name in it or something like that.
Interesting.
This one, it might be a little easier. Do you have that link to the Ordinals page with
right here.
Because that one, if you click on the one with the lady doing the peace sign there, it'll be a little easier to see it here. So this one's called Smooth Filtered. This was actually I guess maybe it's a little blurry on here, but this was one of the last ones I did in the series, and I was really struggling because I knew I wanted to do something with Instagram. Obviously it's such a big part of so many people's lives, and I wasn't sure. The thing about this series is I wanted every piece to feel original. I didn't want to reuse the same gags like over and over, and they all had to communicate something a little bit new. And so I wasn't sure where to take the Instagram one, and I kept thinking about this idea of the filter, and there's filtered cigarettes and the filter on Instagram, and how can I tie some relation between those two things? And so I eventually landed on this idea of like, could I create a screen that shows a woman kind of in the style of a 50s cigarette ad, so like with the makeup and the hair, but used a filter as a way for like her emotions as she's going through the app, and her self-esteem is sort of being eroded based on all the content that she's seeing with like
Right.
the filter as the backdrop. And then I started to think about this idea of decay, with cigarettes obviously decaying our bodies and our lungs, and lung cancer and tar filling our lungs. And so I started to think about the idea of like the decay of our self-perception and our self-esteem. So the first version of this I created was sort of like her face was melting, and it didn't have the other filters in there. And I sent it to a friend, and he's like, "Have you heard of this thing called Instagram face?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Look it up on Wikipedia." And apparently there's this thing called Instagram face where women are having plastic surgery done to change their facial features so that they are more appealing to what the Instagram like algorithm or audience wants to see, enlarging their cheekbones, changing things with their eye sockets, making them like create like plastic surgery, not even just like Botox or like literally plastic surgery. And there's plastic surgeons who do this. And I was just thinking like, how far have we come? Like how damaging can these apps actually be, where people are performing medical procedures to change their look so that
Right.
they feel better. So that's where I really got the idea to sort of have the face and some of those features kind of enlarged to the point where they start melting at the same time that the Instagram logo is like filling up with decay. So that was a little bit of the thought process behind this one. And
What's interesting here too, though, is like, this is even more terrifying because how a camera perceives you when you hold your phone up, the front camera is generally a hair more fisheyed so it can fit you in closer. So it actually kind of like it brings out the center of your face more. So it actually kind of changes the way you look is my point. And the reason, you're a dad, I'm a dad. And I actually just went through a lot of my old pictures because I updated my ex profile picture, and I wanted to play around with AI and feed it a bunch of images. And as I have like 35,000 family images, and I'm in like 600 of them because I'm dad. I'm the one always taking the pictures. Right. You know what I mean? Yep. Or if I'm taking a picture, and I'm in it, it's me taking a picture with a selfie with one of my kids or something like that. So those pictures are never as good because it's distorted. So there's this whole other element. They're making themselves appealing, not to us, on something that is already distorting what they look like. So it's like, it's warped. Like it's like twist warped, it's like warped and bent in the other direction too.
Crazy. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go on to the next one here. So where do you want me to go next?
Go to the second one on the top, the second one in.
Okay. And just so you know, these are all, sometimes it may appear blurry for you. It's crystal clear on this side. So
okay, perfect.
You're all good.
Awesome. Yeah. This one is the Apple one. This one I really wanted, like one of the biggest challenges in our house with our kids is managing their screen time. And even with Apple's built-in screen time controls, they don't work. Like my son, he's known how to get around those controls for many years, 5 years now at this point. And if you actually look it up online, you'll see thousands of threads of parents complaining to Apple that the screen time controls don't work and they can't figure it out. So Apple's been aware of this problem for many years, yet they sort of refuse to fix it.
So same thing with Xbox too. They used to have really good parental controls, and they actually just got rid of them because they were like, people aren't playing enough Xbox. Same exact thing.
So Apple's aware of this, and they are also aware of the damage that this is doing to kids' attention spans and all these other things we've talked about. So for me in particular, this has been like a challenge for many years in our house, like how to figure out how to regulate our kids' screen time in a world where all their friends have it for communication. Yep. So I knew I wanted to like do something related with Apple with screens and kids and communicate on that.
Right.
And I found this ad, a cigarette ad that pretty much was in a kind of similar layout to this, and it was a physician recommending cigarettes. It was from like the 1950s or something like that. So that was sort of the source material. And I was like, how do I just spoof like a fake recommendation about it being good for their brains and kind of work in some kind of visual that hits home that like we're actually like destroying our kids' brains, by putting them on these devices. And so that was sort of the concept for this one, to kind of have the print ad be within the iPad and just tell that story.
Yeah, no, I love it. This one definitely, we don't have to spend a ton of time here. This one's creepy. It reminds me of when Neo's mouth was taken away, but
Yeah.
I never realized until my wife told me, like, it's almost like these billionaires compete on ridiculousness. Like the fact that the Amazon Smile is like an erect boomerang cock. Like I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Oh my God, it's right there. It's right there.
Yeah, this one was super fun to work on. I actually upped my Photoshop skills quite a bit as I worked on this one. Like I drew the tape from scratch. I made the mirror. Like there's a lot of fun stuff that I learned how to do for the first time within Photoshop on this one. I drew the mouth, replaced it, added the other one. So personally, like this was actually a fun piece for me to work on just because I actually could,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on it, but like it felt really good that it came together and kind of gives that creepy look, with the shadow and the lighting. I just spent a lot of time working on that, which was cool. The fingerprint on the mirror, like drawing that on there, just the little details to kind of make it feel a little bit creepier. And then obviously the message here is just like, to your point, the Amazon logo, like being this smile, like this sense that like you're going to be so happy because you can buy so much shit you don't need and it can get there, an hour from now. And it's just like this consumerism that's sort of being
Yeah.
shoved down our throats at the same time that it's like eliminated so many small businesses and all of those types of things. So that was the idea behind that one.
Yeah, my daughter, she told me that in their homeroom, like there's a couple girls who just go on Amazon and they just buy stuff, and it's not that consumerism is new to these younger generations. I mean, we were fully immersed in that too. I think our whole culture is so based on consumerism, and and it's always a premium has been put on our consumerism because that's how the economy grows. When a lot of it is like, dude, just save, like buy what you need. And my son's starting to take after me. He's like, Dad, you need like 3 shirts, a couple pairs of jeans. I'm like, bingo, dude. Like, you don't need a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you want to buy something nice, buy it, but don't buy like the fast fashion thing where you're going to be changing every quarter and then throwing it away. It's like
I have that conversation with my daughter quite often these
oh,
days.
okay.
Always something showing up. I was like, what? Like, cause she, she babysits, she makes money. Like, so, and we try to get her to save and we force her to save some, but it's just like, at some point, how much needless, pointless stuff. Like her room is just full. I probably shouldn't say all this. If she ever sees this, she'll kill me. But, anyways, so it's like, to your point, it's just, but the point is how easy is it for a kid to now order, right? Like that's how easy it is. That piece is called Just One More Click because like Amazon's whole strategy was to remove friction from e-commerce purchasing, coming from a background in digital marketing and e-commerce. Like we studied Amazon, I know the whole strategy, and their thing is like, how do we remove friction? When they invented the one-click buy button, that was like revolutionary in e-commerce, right?
Yep.
When they made shipping go from 2 days, now it's same day. Like all these things they've spent so much money on. And like, yes, when you need something, it's great. So like there's been the thing about this whole campaign, like I'm not completely anti-tech. I use it every day. I use
we all do.
tools. It's part of the system that we're in, and it's like an inescapable system. But I think the thing is that we have to build the awareness of like the dark side of this system.
Yeah.
And it's never going to go away. So it's up to all of us individually to understand the repercussions of these things and figure out our own ways to use this stuff in a healthy, productive manner. So that kind of goes to some of the physical pieces. So this was done by my partner, Assembled Pieces. We thought like, how do we create some art that's kind of like in the vein of the no smoking signs that, people started to post everywhere once people realized that smoking was bad for you? Can we create some fun, cool art that's meant to be posters and, phone cases and things like that for our physical spaces as like reminders? So we designed these 3 posters and 2 phone cases. And my goal is going to be like to print these out, like get them printed on poster size art. And can we get them in cafes, restaurants, businesses, in our homes, like create those physical reminders in a fun way that like you catch yourself in the moment. Cause it's easy to be in a restaurant and you pull out your phone and next thing you know, everyone's just sitting around looking at their phone. And there's like, as time is just ticking away and you're there with your family or your friends, Like, so hopefully we can create some cool art that people want to put around and they see it and they're like, all right, next hour phone stays in my pocket. That to me is
I
how
actually love
is
that.
it
Like
that
I can picture a very cool like local watering hole where you just go with people, maybe it's got board games on the old thing. It doesn't have wall to wall TVs with every sport and every blooper reel where someone's talking to you and behind you is a guy going off a motorcycle over like 80 buses and he doesn't make it. You're like, oh my God, what, why am I being shown this right now? Like I just wanted to hang out with my friend and catch up with him, like the no scrolling all over the place. Like, this kind of has a throwback to those velvety like black light posters. No, I think it's super cool. So yeah, I guess let's go back to like 10, 20, 30,000 feet. And we're welcome to look at any other ones you want. But like you said, we're so captured by this big tech. They, government talks about breaking them up and, different governments favor different ones. And, we know that there's probably been some election result like changing because of the bias of certain platforms. Like right now, and I try and teach my kids this, like you've really got to have critical thinking skills. Even when you have that, we know that advertising goes past the thinking brain straight to the emotional kind of limbic brain. Like, and maybe there's no answer, but like your art brings such great light to it, but what do we do? Like, is there an answer here? Or we just sweep up our little corner of the universe, with our kids and our families and our societies?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer. I wish there was some super easy and obvious answer. I do think like with other industries that have proved harmful, there will come more awareness, or will come more perhaps like it's hard because like on one hand, should there be more regulation? Probably, but am I like regulate the world away? Like I'm not a pro. I don't want endless regulation, and regulation often doesn't work, but also Wild West doesn't work. Like that's the hard thing about this. There's not like an obvious answer, but like, should Apple be forced to have a screen time restriction that actually works if they're going to allow children to use their devices? Probably. Like we know it's bad for them. And so to like throw your hands in the air and just be like, well, it's not our responsibility, go find some other app to do it. Which by the way, like one of the things I thought about doing before starting Psychonaut, I debated the idea of creating a screen time app that was family friendly and like tried to solve all the problems that my family was going through. Aside from realizing I didn't want to build a tech company or go down that route, as I was exploring, I was talking to iOS developers, and they were like, dude, the Apple Screen Time API is unworkable. You will not be able to do anything you want to do.
Yep.
Like it's clear
I was just going to say the same
intentionally
thing.
limiting this stuff. So I don't know that that's really the right, state of the world for these devices that are harmful. So I do think over time there will be these things that change. If you follow Jonathan Haidt at all, he has a book called The Anxious Generation, which is bringing light to a lot of this stuff. And he is starting to advocate for things like no phones in schools. It's been proven that having phones in schools is disruptive to education and all these things. And he's making some headway. He's putting the research out there. He's partnering with schools. Many schools are banning phones in school. So I do think there's going to be some of these things, but I think as individuals, like, most of the problems in the world, I think what we get wrong as a society is we want other people to like solve a lot of our own problems and issues. And at the end of the day, like a lot of it has to come down to personal choice, right? Like we can't just make every last thing illegal that could possibly harm someone.
Yeah.
We have to have the awareness and the self-control and the mindfulness. So part of the purpose of the art is to help people understand that and kind of create that muscle for people.
It's almost like you have to draw awareness to it first. But yeah, both my kids, I was very lucky. Both of them went to a school that literally they were like, unless it's below zero, your kids are going outside every day. Like they're in the mud, they're in the snow, they're playing all year round. It was very hands-on. They taught math and these cool, like putting a piece of yarn around, like for the number 5, it's like a 5-sided star. And doing that creates all these other patterns where if you have like a dial, like 0 through 9, creating those patterns shows you the relationship to other numbers, like this plus this, like so many of these things that are like, it's almost like the crochet philosophy and not the iPad philosophy. So we switched them to public school kind of midstream. We kind of had to, and, it was definitely an eye opener, and public school was not the same as when you and I were kids, when they let us run around way more. Now it's all these iPads like that. That to me was the worst thing that happened. Like the whole, like, and the funny thing is, it's not like their backpacks are any lighter. They just now have a bunch of books that they don't use and an iPad. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, and there's pros too. Like my son is like a super smart sciencey math guy, and he's like a Desmos, that graphing software. Like he can look at equations now and be like, oh, that's like a spiral, or that's like a golden ratio, so it's teaching them interesting things in different ways. But he's kind of an anti-phone and anti-over-screen guy too. But it's hard because nobody else is. And so you're kind of like competing against like TikTok and Snapchat, where all this drama is happening, kind of like where you and I are. Like, look at last weekend. Again, the drama it's insanity. I would say that was peak insanity. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's like all this stuff triggers our dopamine receptors. It is like, it pulls us in. Like once I heard there was drama, I was like, oh, I really don't want to look into this, because once I look, then I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. And
it's hard not to.
That's why all the negative shit is what works on social media, because it plays into our lizard brains and our fears and anxieties, and that is what pulls us in and fires off the dopamine and cortisol and all these other things. And so, I've tried to create strategies for myself. Like, one, I don't sleep with my phone in my room anymore. I probably started that a little over a year ago.
Right.
It's been life-changing, because like I literally, if my phone is by my dresser, I know I don't have the self-control. I will scroll Twitter until way after I'm tired. And then first thing in the morning, I'll pick it up and I'll stay in bed for way longer than I should. Yep. So I leave it in my office, and like, I miss out on stuff, and I try to put it in there at 9 or 9:30, and then I don't know what's happening. And sometimes I'll come down and I'll miss a text or a convert, but like, it's worth it. It's all worth it. I haven't looked back. So like, I always suggest, if like people are scared to do it, but like, try it for a week. It's not a permanent decision. So I do that. On the weekends, there's a period of time we bought one of these like digital lock boxes where I take everyone's phones in the family, and for on Saturday afternoon or whatever it is, especially for home, it's all locked up for the day, and forces people to go to their friends' houses. Like,
I
that's
love
been
that.
great. It's been amazing. And so we sort of forced that. And you get some resistance, and if you don't have to do it every single weekend, but just find some time to just all as a family lock up your phones. Don't, if we're at a restaurant, like we try so hard to not take out our phones. So again, I think it's building awareness, adding habits. And then the other thing is like, find a hobby. Like my son, the number one thing that has gotten him off his screen in the past couple of weeks is he started playing guitar. And now that he's playing guitar, he'll go an hour in the night. He'll sit down for an hour and a half practicing, learning a song, and he's not on his phone. And if he is, he's watching a YouTube video teaching him how to play something, which I care a lot less about.
Which I would argue is entirely different. I mean, you can learn anything. Like, I'm somewhat handy, so when I need to fix something, like, I can look online 3 different videos how to do it, and if I'm like, that's above my pay grade, I just won't do it. But so there's tons of positives with all of this, but like you said, the problem is the addiction, the sitting next to the bedside table. I don't leave it. I put it in the closet, but once I put it away, it's away, unless there's something like going on where I have to do it. But your sleep goes way down when you're looking at a screen much later. I used to have those yellow tinted glasses, or the blue, whatever, the blue blocking ones for that light, but it's just like, at some point it's good to just unplug, be like, I'm done for the day. Like, I've had a good day. I got involved and got in the virtual space, and you know what? Now I'm done.
Totally. Back to reality, the other reality.
Exactly. Well, dude, I love your collection. Like, is there anything else like we didn't cover, or that you'd love to add about Psychonaut or just the collection? Why don't you tell us what you're thinking about, I don't know, sales and all that stuff before we part ways?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about this collection, we inscribed these 7 pieces. We announced the art. I actually don't have any immediate plans to like sell these. Like, I don't really know in this market, like, how do you sell 7 1-of-1s? What are they worth? Like,
Yeah.
I put a lot of work into this. I think it's a great idea. So like, I'm not in a rush to like just try and mint them, to make a little bit of money. To me, it's more about people consuming the art, viewing it, thinking critically. So part of the reason why we did things like make a couple phone cases that we thought were cool, visual reminders
Right.
for people to have on their phones, the posters, is because if people do want to either support us or engage with this campaign in some way, it's an affordable way for people to. There's a certain the Surgeon General warning on the phone. We like that. We thought that was a fun one. I'm actually putting that on my phone. Mine comes today. So um, those are the ways that we thought would be cool to like create something consumable without
Right.
feeling like we had to go mint the art. I'm considering the idea of doing some kind of open edition mint with the poster style pieces in some small quantities and maybe using that as a raffle to give away one of the 1-of-1s or something. But I have to think it through and like figure
Yeah.
out what's the right way. Like, to me, this was way more about the art first, and maybe it's like stupid to do it that way, and I should have had more of a strategy. But my goal with Psychonaut is I think the more cool work we keep putting out there that is impactful and is different, I think we'll build a reputation, or quote unquote build a brand, if you will. And that in the future, when we have other ideas, people will be paying attention to what we do. Like, we have a lot of stuff we're working on that I call these concept collections, a lot of smaller concept collections that are meant to spark conversation in different parts of our lives. We did the Prep A catalog, which was meant to spark reflection on our ego and self-image.
Right.
And we have some that we're working on that are kind of commenting on political identity. So all these things that are just pushing people to reflect is our goal, to be honest.
Well, very cool. Well, RG, thanks for coming on the show. Definitely keep building. I love seeing it because, like you said, there's so much great art out there. There's also so much drama. There's also a lot of extraction going on. But people are adults and they can buy whatever they want. But I love art. When you're scrolling the timeline, we all do it anyway. I like to see art that just kind of makes me think and resonates. And, it's cool that you're doing it and that, you're not afraid to have no roadmap and just using your instinct and your ADHD brain and maybe a touch of the neurodivergence to just create super cool stuff. So appreciate you, man. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. And it was fun to have a video platform to like show the art and talk through the inspiration. Really cool what you're doing and love your show and just appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, everybody, I'm getting better at promoting other shows now. So next week, Tuesday, we're going to have Chip, who is the artist behind
Chip is
Sheeple.
awesome.
I know. Yeah, I thought you'd love that, but I love what he's doing. Again, another really small collection. And those drawings are just beautiful. But the thing I love about it, it's like, yeah, we all want to make money, but he made that for his children, right? And he made it because they had to get rid of their flock. And, it's like, hey, sheep totally get a bad rap. And he's like, sheep have completely interesting, like herd-like and supportive personalities. So let's focus on the positive there. So, I love what I do. Appreciate your words, but everybody follow Psychonaut, follow RG Sayre, and Big Tech-Bacco. He's got a bunch of stuff with posters and everything, but I love this. Anything that makes me think and pause on the brainless timeline scroll to me is a thumbs up. So RG, thank you.
Thanks, Blue.
Take care, everybody.